Stephen Covey. How many of you know Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? 20 years ago, I treated myself to go to one of Stephen Covey's 4.5-day management workshops up in Sundance, Utah. It was a lot of money. It was $5,000. I had the money. I went. I'm having lunch with Stephen Covey on the second or third day, and he said, "Mike, what do you do?" And I said, "I teach people how to sell." And he went, "Oh, salespeople." He just groaned. Because by then, Stephen Covey was a big deal, and there were hundreds of salespeople trying to get face-to-face with Stephen Covey. And he said to me, he said, "My assistant is really good at screening, and maybe 1 in 20 will get by my assistant, and I'll see that salesperson. But even when I have that salesperson across the desk from me in my office, I'm not buying anything until I believe that person is sincere and competent." I like that definition, so I started using that definition of trust in all my solution selling classes and customer-centric selling classes. Years later, Franklin Quest, the planner company, they merged with Stephen Covey, Covey Leadership, and they formed Franklin Covey, and now there's a course called The Speed of Trust. And in their definition of trust, they say character plus competence. So for a stranger to trust you in a sales situation, certainly, before they trust you, they're going to have to believe that you are a person of character and that you're competent enough to understand their business. But all these sales methodologies, mine included, are working on the blue circle, the competence. None of these sales methodologies were teaching salespeople how to lead the buyer to the conclusion that they have character. No framework for leading the buyer to a conclusion. This person has character. The missing link, what the top 13% have, is an intuitive ability to connect. They do it intuitively. They can't teach it to anybody else. That's why most star salespeople, when they're promoted to management, they go down, because they can't teach people what they do intuitively. That top 13% level of trust is intuitive. And so with story seekers, we now have a framework that even an engineer can learn to connect with people. And so now we look at a sales organization. We'll say to a VP of sales, you've probably got some salespeople in your organization that you wish you had not hired, right? And they all say, "Oh boy." And I say, all right, so let's just try and set realistic expectations. Here we've got the top 13%, they're doing great. But let's look at the next 50%. And in that ranking, when we have them do the report of the best to the worst in sales, the next 50%, they say to me, "I'd hire that person again." But that person is still struggling making the numbers that we thought he or she could make when we hired him. But they're people of character and they're competent. They know the product, but they're still struggling. And the primary reason they're struggling is they don't intuitively connect, and so they end up telling customers what they need to do. They have the expertise. Most big consulting companies, Price Waterhouse and McKinsey, if you look at those companies, maybe 3% of them are rainmakers, can bring in new business. The vast majority of them can't sell, but they have expertise. They're competent and they have character, but they can't sell. So the real payback with a methodology like Story Seekers is teaching the people who are already competent and they're already people of character how to connect.